Hey guys, time for a Q&A response video. I posted up the Q&A the other day. Might have been yesterday, I can't remember for sure. But just headed back from the gym, had a couple minutes, so I wanted to go ahead and knock out those questions. First one was, what piece of equipment do I prefer for HIIT cardio and why? For HIIT cardio, it kind of depends on how much I'm doing or how much I'm having someone do, but I think it's a good idea to rotate equipment sometimes, especially if someone's doing a higher amount of HIIT, a higher frequency of sessions. I think it's good to rotate just because obviously your legs get really beat up. If you're only doing 2 sessions a week, something like that, it's stationary bike or spin bike is normally pretty good. I mean, you can really dig in, get some really intense sessions. But with that being said, you can also get some pretty intense sessions with something like battle ropes as well. So really simple way to do it is rotate between either elliptical or bike and on the ropes. So that's normally how I'll have people do it if they're higher frequency of sessions. Like I said, that way you're giving your legs adequate rest. Next question was, what advice do you have for prep coaches that are just getting started? How did you build your clientele? Just some general advice for someone that's kind of newer at coaching. So for me, I post a lot about this stuff all the time, just my thoughts and stuff on coaching philosophy. And for me, it's just good, honesty, building relationships with people, putting out information. I mean, I put out all kinds of information. It's not like I'm charging anyone for this information. It's just something I like to do. It takes extra time, but it helps people and it gets people interested, and of course it can translate into clientele for me. I mean, I get questions all the time through Facebook especially, and I'm never hesitant to answer them. It gets a little overwhelming at times, sure, but I do my best to answer everybody, and that builds relationships. And I mean, you can tell if someone genuinely has questions for you and genuinely wants to get better if they're just mooching. I think you are a little more intuitive about that type of thing as you go on as a coach, just because you can see who signs up, who doesn't sign up, and yada, yada, yada. But don't be afraid to help people. Don't be afraid to put out information, offer a helping hand. I mean, I've gotten a lot of clients that way, relationships that I built over months and months and even years. I mean, I had somebody send me an email just last week, and I won't mention any names, but she wants to sign up her and her husband, and they've been following my posts and videos, and they listen to the podcast and all that, and they have for 2 years. And well, the podcast hasn't been around that long, but my information. But anyhow, 2 years. Then they just love my style. They've gathered information just that way and got a good feel for how I operate, and they want to sign up, commit to a pretty large package right off the bat, which that's definitely not the first time that type of things happen. It happens a lot. That's just me trusting that I'm putting out good information and that it will eventually translate into business for me and helps people at the same time. So, I mean, I would say that's one of the main ways. Then obviously word of mouth. You do good work, you get word of mouth. That's just how it goes. I think too, an untapped resource for me for a long time was local clientele. I honestly didn't have anyone very local, and I do now. I've kind of built up a local rapport, and I think that's helpful. It's just there is a lot of stuff locally, not necessarily right by me, but in Columbus, which is just south of me, and I've built up some rapport there, and then word travels. I help a couple people go to a couple of local shows, and then translates over to more and more and more. And it's cool to have people locally, because then I can actually meet with them at times. So I would say those are probably the main things. And then second question, same person asks, what do I do to help with weak muscle groups? And they ask about back calves and arms specifically. So in general, frequency I think is good for most weak body parts. Just adding frequency. I mean, that's a really simple way to work on weak body parts. And then from there, you're kind of fine tuning things. They ask about cell swelling work. Yeah, I think that's great. I think that's a good way to add frequency without tons of tax on your CNS. It's let's say you're hitting your arms 3 times a week, pretty good amount. The volume's getting up there, and your elbows might be getting a little sore, or just your joints, you're getting beat up, or your arms aren't recovering. So maybe you just add some cell swelling work in, and you're hitting your arms 6 times a week now, or 8 or 10, because you can do cell swelling work quite a bit. It's really low tax on your nervous system, easy on your joints because the reps are higher. And then it's obviously a different mechanism for growth, so that's good to have. And then that's not really a good example for CNS, because arms aren't really going to tax your CNS that much, but something like back, definitely. I mean, you can only do so much frequency on back, unless you're just doing one exercise a day. Obviously, you could probably do that every day, but you're not going to be able to do back 5 days a week without some consequences for your CNS, because it's just such a big muscle group, and unless you were doing really low intensity, it wouldn't, you would just be spent. So back, yeah, cell swelling, you could still do it. I mean, as long as you have a pretty good mind muscle connection with your lats and with your the other major muscle groups in your back, you could do something with a band, light at home, some dumbbells. Doesn't really take much. Cell swelling is very, very little time to complete, so yeah, that's a great tool. But first would be frequency, for me anyhow, and then increasing overall volume to an extent, and then adding cell swelling. I'd probably do it. I'd probably say in that order, although some people have already done some of them, so I go right to adding the cell swelling, or right to adding the frequency, or whatever it might be. But calves are kind of going to be the same lines as arms. I personally have found the most growth in my calves, and it's still not great, but my calves sucked for a long time. So I found the most growth through basically just training the shit out of them all the time. I hit them right now. I hit them 4 days a week on my 4 major my major workouts a week, and that's just your traditional heavier work. Good eccentrics, good concentrics, good stretches. Just feeling the muscle. Usually the reps aren't very high. And then I will do cell swelling work several times a week as well. So they're getting hit pretty much every day, and throw in some occlusion work and stuff. So that would be my take. Just so keep in mind, how large is the muscle group? What's the tax going to be on your CNS? And you can kind of figure out what the frequency and volume is going to be from there. And then another question was, what is my favorite fat burner for contest prep? And I got this through a message from another friend of mine, and he asked specifically about like my favorite between Clen, albuterol, ephedrine, things like that. So I will focus on the ones that are acting, on beta receptors versus alphas, because you have yohimbine, and that's kind of different mechanism, so I won't really touch on that. But I mean, clenbuterol is going to be strongest, albuterol, and probably ephedrine. You can go in that order, but it's kind of a tolerance thing. Some people are fine on Clen. If you can tolerate it, it's going to be a bit stronger. So, that's probably going to be your best choice. Going to be dose dependent per person, what you can handle. Next down's albuterol. I find most people handle that pretty well. It's not quite as bad as Clen. Still a lot of the shakiness and stuff like that, just more mild. But again, the effects are probably going to be more mild too. And then ephedrine, definitely a different feel to it, since it's has a different mechanism as far as the stimulant effect. But it's still acting on the same receptors, and it's still going to help some. It's nothing. As far as like over the counter things you can get like that, yeah, that's definitely going to be the strongest. So I would say in that order, it's more of a tolerance issue, and then obviously what your federation allows. So that's all the questions for today, guys. Thanks for listening. If you have any more, go ahead and ask on the next Q&A.